But you've got states that are openly in defiance of federal law enforcement on behalf of illegal criminal invaders that are hurting and making victims of American citizens.
So then we're seeing a revolving door of justice. We're seeing that these criminal illegal aliens are exiting the jails and going back onto New York or Chicago or these other sanctuary streets to re-perpetuate their crimes. Today,
they have established irreparable injury, and an injunction is in the public interest. Oh, Tish, blown out. Hand them over, says Homeland Security to Letitia James out there in New York. We're finding out that apparently she released very close to 7,000 illegal alien criminals in New York since January 20th. And Homeland is saying, we would like you to detain them so that we could come and get them and remove them. And these are criminal illegal aliens. And there's a process by which local cops will arrest somebody for committing a crime. They'll investigate who that person is. Oh, you're an illegal alien. You're not a citizen. What they could do is just hold them so that ICE could come and remove them. What they don't do is that, so they release them. They flood back out into society to recommit new crimes and to reoffend. And then when ICE goes to arrest them and pick them up in their court proceedings or goes arrest them outside of a Home Depot or whatever, all of that could have been avoided if the local cops would have just hung on to them so that the feds could come and investigate them. And maybe they've got some ability to file an asylum claim or a claim against torture or whatever. And they could get all the due process in the world once they start to interface with the immigration system. But they don't want to do that because they'd rather just have illegals taking over their sanctuary city. So now Homeland is saying, hey, Letitia, will you hand them over? Look at these people that you're releasing. And apparently New Yorkers love it. They're just like, no, it's fine. We like to be raped and attacked constantly. It says here, 6,947 criminal illegal aliens released since January 20th. We're calling on Big Tish to stop this dangerous derangement and commit to honoring our ICE detainers. It's just common sense, okay, Tish? So here's more they say from Trisha. Under Kathy Hochul, New York has refused to honor ICE detainers and released back into New York streets 6,947 criminal illegal aliens since January. How many people that is? That's a lot. When's the last time you were around 7,000 people? It's a big number. The crimes of these aliens include 29 homicides, killing people, 2,500 assaults, beating people, 207 Bergdorfs happening in Bergdorfs, the real ones though, 199 burglaries, 305 robberies, 392 dangerous drug offenses, which are, the bad drugs, 300 weapons offenses, and more. This is why we flood the zone. We have to identify them and remove them. And then they go and they pick these people up because the government who's already arrested them won't hold them because they'd rather have them in the society than deported from our country, even if they're committing 29 homicides, 2,000 assaults, 200, Bergdorfs, 199 burglaries, and all the things. They're fine with it. It's New York. That's their way of life, I guess, under Tish and Hochul. But the New York Post gave us a full breakdown on this. Apparently they were communicating and got the data. They said, okay, 7,000 people. One of them was, he was a maniac who was booted 8 times from the United States. And he got a machete and attacked a cop from Ithaca. So they just let him out. The rap sheets behind these people include a laundry list of offenses. All of them were protected by the state of New York and Letitia James, the attorney general, who just had her case dismissed for the time being. I think it's going to be coming back, but we'll see. Virtually all Americans agree that criminals should be removed. They sent a letter over to her. Todd Lyons said, hey, Letitia, stop allowing these criminals to wreak havoc on our streets. Some migrant criminals, though, have already been picked up by immigration officers after they were cut loose, and they flip about that. Why are you arresting them at a Circle K? Why are you getting them at the grocery? Because they let them go. They were already in custody, but they released them. If they would have held them, we would have just gone to the jail and said, oh, you got our batch today? Load them up. Among them was this guy called Velasevich Danilanovich Kim. Oh, he was busted for traveling to have intercourse with a girl who he thought was 13. Oh, great. Let's let him run free. It's okay. No big deal. The sicko was convicted in Albany County. He was sentenced to time served. Oh my God. Wow. How much time did he serve? Was it like 100 years? Incredible. No, it wasn't. He was released on probation in February 2023 after probation officers refused to help ICE detain him. Okay. That's according to Homeland. He has since been detained and deported by, thank you, President Trump. Then we had this other dude called Steven Henriquez Galicia, 25. He came over. He's a Dominican national, entered the U.S. illegally in 16. He was arrested in the Bronx last year for attempted murder after he allegedly opened fire outside an apartment building. Well, Well, he was probably just applying for a job that an American wouldn't do. A judge let him go on cashless bail, of course, despite the Bronx district attorney asking for a hold on him for a $300,000 bond. ICE picked him up on 9/20 this year. Thank you, Christy Nome. We had another person called Anderson Smith Satuye Martinez, 21. He's a gang member from the Crips, and he came in from Honduras. He's a national with a prior assault conviction. He also was busted August 19th. Criminal possession of a weapon, possession of a controlled substance, despite an ICE detainer. Hey, can you hold on to him, please, New York? No, we're not. We released him. Cashless bail. Gone. ICE picked him up anyways in the Bronx. And people will flip out, okay, in the media. Why are they just like coming in here and knocking on people's doors and kidnapping people up? This is why. Because they just let them go. This guy here, Jesus Romero Hernandez. Bad hombre. Maybe if they would have held him, then ICE wouldn't have had to go track him down. They didn't do that. Here's Kim. Kim got picked up. He's deported. Here's Galicia. He's gone. Here's Hernandez. Gone. He was busted by ICE in the Bronx, currently awaiting deportation. Not quite gone yet. This guy's called Anderson Smith Satuye Martinez. We heard about him. Still in federal custody, waiting for a senator from the Democratic Party to come bail him out. ICE is now demanding that Tish get her act together. Hand over some 7,100 illegal migrant thugs who are currently locked up, according to a letter that the state's top lawyer got yesterday. The feds say that they want to ensure the convicts never walk free in New York. The letter that Tish said, these are people who are not only in the country illegally, but they've committed additional crimes. Not only here illegally, but they've also committed some of the worst crimes. 7,113 aliens are locked up in New York with active detainers. ICE is saying, can you please just hand them to us? You've already got them in custody. They're responsible for all sorts of crimes. 148 homicides, 717 assaults, 134 burglaries. New York says, no, they're ours. You can't have them. You're going to deport them? You can't do that. The letter obtained by the Post says a staggering 6,900 illegals with active ICE detainers were released. Their sanctuary laws tie the hands of law enforcement, and the city's been taken over. They also are prohibited from using any resources to help the feds. I don't know how else you would describe a cold civil war other than, a soft rebellion of the states against federal law enforcement authority on behalf of foreign invaders. I don't know how close you have to get to calling it a cold civil war. Right? It's not actively shooting at anybody. And could you draw some parallels between, the US and the Soviet Union on the international stage and parallel that back to what's happening here, or even back to Civil War rebellion? But you've got states that are openly in defiance of federal law enforcement on behalf of illegal criminal invaders that are hurting and making victims of American citizens. Okay, somebody's getting killed. Somebody's getting Bergdorf. These are speeding tickets, which would also be inappropriate. This is America. Follow the speed limit. But you understand the point. We're being victimized by this. And they're just like, well, sorry, we're still not going to work with you. So what is that other than a rebellion? So the agency also included a supplemental with its letter highlighting a dozen immigrants with heinous criminal histories. The New York Post is now publishing this on the front page. Release them to us. Give them over to us. This guy was deported 8 times, running around with a machete. Had an ICE detainer. They didn't care. They let him go. One of the most egregious cases was Hernandez, a Mexican national who, despite being removed from the U.S. on 7 occasions, it's like we're just insane. They let him go again. He served a 179-day sentence for viciously attacking an Ithaca police officer with a machete. A cop with a machete. 179 days, doesn't even get 6 months. Here you go, get out. The Tompkins County Sheriff's Office had refused to honor another federal arrest warrant and released him. So foreign invaders are attacking our law enforcement agents, and we've got insurrectionists in our state governments that are facilitating it. Please confirm whether the state of New York plans to honor the detainers. The letter to James said, we're calling on Letitia to stop this dangerous derangement and commit to honoring these arrest detainers so that these people stop terrorizing more innocent Americans. So that went over to Tish. She's not going to care about that at all. But here is what Trisha had to say about this, saying we got over 7,000 people. They've already released 7,000. They've got another 7,000 that are currently in jail. Can you please hand them over to us, please, so that we can come and arrest them? Stop playing politics. Start protecting your own citizens who are the victims of the homicides and the R's and the burglaries and the drug crimes and all of the things. She said here the following on with Fox.
Dana, when we talk about sanctuary cities, part of what that means is that the law enforcement on the ground, the local and state, are banned from working with our ICE law enforcement to lodge detainers, to hand over these criminals to our law enforcement after they've served time. So then we're seeing a revolving door of justice. We're seeing that these criminal legal aliens are exiting the jails and going back onto New York or Chicago or these other sanctuary streets to re-perpetuate their crimes. Today, in New York City's jails, are 7,169 criminal illegal aliens. We're talking about hundreds of murderers, hundreds of sexual predators, drug traffickers, the worst of the worst. Dan Goldman and these other sanctuary city politicians, they should agree to hand over those individuals, honor those detainers, and then we won't have to flood the zone with our ICE law enforcement. We won't have to put those men and women on the ground because we will get these vicious criminals out of New York City's jails.
Right.
Yeah, and imagine, see all this B-roll footage, all this behind-the-scenes actions of what's going on around these ICE protests and outside federal buildings and in the streets of Portland and Chicago and all over the country. Just imagine if this was reversed. For example, if we had a situation where there were American patriots who were protesting outside FBI field offices on a regular basis right after January 6th and were interfering with the FBI going in and rounding up the J6ers, kicking their doors in, terrorizing their families, kidnapping them out of their homes for walking into a building, it's the people's house, and they invited them in. If we were out there on the streets, banging on the FBI cars as they were making their way to go and round up a J6er, they would call us enemies of the state. They would call us insurrectionists. They would probably shoot and kill you and pass laws to strip you of everything. It would have been a total bloodbath, right? But while that's all happening, some of Tish's lawfare is also now burning to the ground. You see, a report from Town Hall says that Letitia, in addition to fighting on behalf of illegal aliens, is also fighting against pro-lifers. You have a problem with an abortion, you should be in jail. You're an illegal alien murdering American citizens, we're going to let you go free. That's New York. So here they tell us that her lawfare has been struggling. She just lost a big one out of the Court of Appeals in the Second Circuit, and it's about this interesting thing called abortion pill reversal. There's this abortion pill, you take it, it pumps your bodies full of this chemical. Well, there's another chemical that you can take to counteract that chemical. So if you're about to be in the middle of an abortion, you take an anti-abortion. Yeah, take the abortion pill, then you take an anti-abortion pill, and it cancels out. So Tish was unhappy that some group in New York was talking about that, so she went after them, and they sued her. And they said, we have a First Amendment right. We can talk about this if we want to. And guess what? The Second Circuit Court of Appeals now agrees. Big win for the National Institute of Family and Life Advocates, Gianna's House, Choose Life of Jamestown, and doing business as this other one called Options Care Center. So they all sued Letitia. They are the plaintiffs, the pro-lifers, and Letitia is Big Tish of New York. We got 3 circuit judges who came back down, and they said, all right, here's the details. So Tish loses. They say the preliminary injunction requirements have met. The pro-lifers win. Tish loses. Here's the background on the case. Now, this case concerns statements certain nonprofit organizations have made. A bunch of these nonprofits came in. They're pro-life. They say, hey, we have a protocol that we've developed that counteracts the effects of an abortion. If you go in for an abortion, you take some oral medication, they can reverse it. A woman may seek to have a medication-induced abortion by first taking a dose of mifepristone, followed by a dose of misoprostol 24 to 48 hours later. So this little 1-2 combo, you take it. Now, the dose of mifepristone is designed to block the body's progesterone receptors. Progesterone is a hormone critical to maintaining pregnancy, and if you block that, then mifepristone can prevent the pregnancy from continuing. Now, once the receptors have been blocked, effectively ending the pregnancy, the dose of misoprostol induces the rest of the abortion. If a woman has begun a medication-induced abortion by taking the first drug, but has not yet taken the second drug, and decides that she would like to continue her pregnancy, she may take another pill called a progesterone supplement in attempt to counter the effects of the first pill. Okay, so first pill causes a hormonal change. Second pill is like an evacuation. First pill counteracts the hormonal change of the first pill, the anti-abortion pill. Now, the theory is that the progesterone supplements can increase the woman's progesterone levels to such a degree that the effects of mifepristone are then neutralized. So the use of progesterone is called the abortion pill reversal, or the APR. Now, on May 6th, Letitia, she sued Heartbeat International, the state of New York. This is an entity that maintains a network of nonprofit organizations. There's 11 organizations, and they all got sued. She said, oh, you're committing fraud. Letitia's gone crazy again because she already said that Trump committed fraud. No fraud. You're committing fraud because she just uses her office to attack her political opponents. More specifically, Tish said that this pro-life organization, they had comments on their websites and social media about the reversal that were false or misleading, misrepresenting the efficacy of this reversal process. The state also said, Letitia, among other things, that statements were made on your website that women can get information about these things, and it induced people to get the treatment. So you're committing fraud. Now, plaintiffs in the instant actions sued. Okay, you got all of these organizations, nonprofits, Gianna's House, Choose Life, the pro-lifers, Christian ministries, they all sued. They're nonprofit. They're opposed to abortion. They maintain a network of pregnancy centers. They're Christian organizations. No wonder they're under attack. And so they provide education, training, and support about parenthood and pregnancy and all of these things. Gianna's House, shout out, offers a variety of free services, counseling, parental education, all sorts of nice things. Amazing. Shout out to Gianna's House. You're looking to make a donation to a nonprofit. Sounds like a good one. So they put statements on their website like this. If you have recently taken the abortion pill and you're having regret, it may be possible to undo the effects of abortion drugs. Learn more here. Click this link. Saying progesterone has been used. Here's some more links, and we're allowed to talk about these things. Now, as a result of these concerns, she said, right, so they got basically sued by Letitia. Then they turned around. They filed a complaint. They said, wait, she's suing us. She's trying to attack our First Amendment rights. We're allowed to talk about this process. And at the lower level, the district court granted them a win. Said, actually, you're right. Said, first of all, Letitia and enforcement, talking about the concept of abstention. The district court said that younger abstention was unwarranted here because things aren't intertwined to an appropriate level, determining on the record that the speech was non-commercial because of the uncontroverted evidence that they were not economically motivated. Okay, so in other words, it's not a commercial transaction, so they're not subject to commercial regulations like a pharmaceutical company. They're just saying, no, this is just information about a protocol. They're not saying, we're a pharmaceutical company and this is a drug that you can take to achieve these ends. Non-commercial, no evidence that they're economically motivated. They're referring everybody to third-party providers. They didn't collect any referral fees or commissions or any of that. So it's just speech. The speech is non-commercial and you can't sue them for that. Tish. The district court further concluded that because the plaintiffs also suffered a constitutional injury, the remaining injunction requirements were satisfied and this appeal now follows. So Tish said, this is crazy. You can't come in here and exercise federal jurisdiction over this case. You shouldn't get involved. In sum, we conclude the district court correctly declined to abstain from adjudicating the claims under the Younger Doctrine. So kind of a standing thing. Letitia was just saying, you can't even hear this case. And they said, yes, we can within our jurisdiction. So we're going to hear it. Now, here's more about the merits. So with respect to the merits, now Letitia argues that if you grant an injunction, so in other words, if Tish is stopped for this, she says, well, that the injunction should be reversed. They say we're unpersuaded. We conclude that the lower court was right based on the current record that they're going to win. This is a First Amendment problem. These were non-commercial statements that were on their website. Letitia has failed to show that the regulatory conduct that restricts speech can withstand strict scrutiny. She's like, well, it's almost like selling a pharmaceutical and they're not following the regulations. Like they're not selling anything. They're just talking about a process. Furthermore, as for the remaining requirements, we discern no error in the lower level court that the plaintiffs, the pro-lifers, are going to win. They have established irreparable injury and an injunction is in the public interest. Oh, Tish, blown out. And so she's now lost in the Court of Appeals. They say the First Amendment applies to the states through incorporation under the 14th Amendment, saying you can't attack speech. Also applies to you, Tish. One of the categories that is not actually protected is commercial speech, right? Enjoys a limited measure of protection, but you might want to regulate it. That's why we've got all sorts of claims around false, deceptive, misleading advertising. Commercial speech that is not false or deceptive and does not concern unlawful activities may also be protected under the basic principles of free speech. Now, the core notion of commercial speech is that which does no more than propose a commercial transaction. So what were they saying? Were they trying to sell anything? Lots of rules around how to interpret it, but they say, no, the lower level court did their analysis fine. Based on the record right now, they're going to win on the First Amendment because their speech is non-commercial and Letitia has not demonstrated that any regulation of that speech would survive strict scrutiny, constitutional muster. It would be unlawful to limit it. So the pro-lifers assert, and they want to continue to assert, that we can provide information to people here. We can give people links, instructions, send them off to third parties. They want to go consult a doctor and get a prescription for these new hormones. They can do that. And we don't provide any of these services ourselves at all. Court of Appeal says, yeah, it looks like there's no evidence to the contrary at all. No commissions, no fees, no remuneration, no referral fees, nothing. No economic motivation to provide this at all, other than sharing their protocol. Our conclusion here is consistent with another decision in the Fourth Circuit. And so we're not doing anything strange here. And Tish should have known better. If we hold otherwise, then we could subject a sweeping range of nonprofits to regulate their speech, which is what Tish wants. Only the nonprofits that she doesn't like. And of course, all the pro-lifers would be nuked. But they say even an LGBT rights group that provides free information in hormone therapy and these other things may be allowed to be censored ultimately. So it's way too broad, and Letitia's arguments are unpersuasive. She says that the speech should be considered commercial because someone must bear the cost of the speech. So if they get this information and they do something with it, then somebody's going to pay for that thing. Insurance, medical provider, charities, it's a stream of commerce, which is crazy because that would be basically any information. Anytime that you saw or received any information and then bought something, like, okay, that's commercial speech. Wow. However, this would be true of any nonprofit. There you go. Providing information, free services, or anything. Everything is going to inevitably have some commercial value, and someone will have paid for something somewhere. Therefore, it's an illogical standard, and she's an idiot. So the Attorney General also contends that despite the fact that these pro-lifers do not offer services, they are commercial because consumers might believe that they are commercial. She says, well, it's kind of like advertisements for medical services, and they're like promoting other services. So it's like an advertising referral type of thing. So that makes it commercial. And she also says that you have to think about their motivations for engaging in the speech in the first place. And so it could be commercial, but they don't buy any of it. The judge says, because we hold their speech is non-commercial, she can only regulate it if it meets strict scrutiny, the highest standard. If you're going to attack a constitutional right, to pass that test and to meet this standard, you must specifically identify an actual problem in need of solving, and the curtailment of the free speech must be actually necessary to the solution. Very stringent standard. Here, Letitia has not proven that at all. And so she's not satisfied her heavy burden. And so we conclude the lower level court was right. The speech is non-commercial, and there was no error in any of the other factors that the lower court analyzed. Now, we note that Letitia principally contends that these other requirements were not met because she thinks that we're going to win on the first prong, but the court says they have to show irreparable injury, the plaintiffs, and they have. So we need to issue an injunction. Sorry, Tish. We've previously explained that securing First Amendment rights is in the public interest. Here, the preliminary injunction serves to secure the First Amendment rights of the plaintiffs. They're allowed to provide information to women on how to counteract the effects of the abortion pill, and there's no basis for limiting their speech. So in sum, we hold that based on the current record, the district court did not abuse its discretion, and Tish loses. So for the foregoing reasons, we affirm the order of the district court, and Tishy Letitia loses the case. So we'll see what she does if she ultimately wants to appeal this to the Supreme Court of the United States. But I think she's on a losing streak as it relates to this issue. And just logically thinking about it, it's like, okay, if anybody says anything, somebody's going to buy something at some point. I mean, you're going to like listen to a podcast and then go buy a dinner. It's like, did they influence you to buy the dinner? There you go. Commercial speech. Ban Joe Rogan because you were listening to him when you were barbecuing or whatever. So Letitia loses. She's got 7,000 illegal alien criminals who have now flooded her streets that she's released. And she's got another 7,000 in custody. Would be nice if she turned them over. Help New York become a more secure society and stop attacking the pro-lifers. Actually go after the criminals who are abusing their citizens. We'll keep our eye on this one. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do.